guess. Yes, I think we just had a small, not small, a very recent technical talk about how to test the phantom CSS and all that. I was working on the same project, and we had a huge project. I understand, like it's one website, or I won't say it's a website, it's a marketing website, and you are using it in multiple countries. For an example, give you the width and the breadth of the website. Let's suppose that we are spread across 130 countries, and if I'm building that thing, that means I'm supporting the localization for all 130 countries, right? So need to test that. Need to understand what are the implications, what are the localized stuff, and there are lots of challenges around it. We're going to test that in the I18N. Challenges. First thing was very simple. Whatever you are going to implement for the existing Ford, I call it Ford because it's a massive thing. It's already built. It's already built for the most of the countries which are supporting English or the languages which are supported from right to left. Right? The flow of reading is right to left. Sorry, left to right. It's quite confusing. Yeah. So it was already built. It was in production. Right. Now what we are going to support is Middle East, like Vishnu mentioned in earlier talks. So in Middle East, most of the most common languages, Arabic, Persian, or something like that. These are right to left. There are lots of things includes in there. It's not about the text which is right aligned or which is left aligned. You need to understand their way of reading the languages, right? So we need to keep it simple, whatever we are going to build. And of course, right, has to be extensible and scalable in the sense that if we are building something, so we are not breaking other things. Even on top of that, if we include further, if we go to far northeast, right, like Japan or China or Korea or something like that, so they have different way of supporting the language. Like Japanese, Chinese, Korean, all these languages traditionally are supported top to bottom, right to left, which is one more level of complexity. So we need to think in that okay, we are supporting one level, which is now just RTF. Now we need to think ahead that it can come from top to bottom. And though most of these languages does support LDR. Why? Because there is no actual computer as of now which supports Chinese languages from top to bottom and something like that. So they actually went ahead and they changed and they modified their language to think in LDR fashion, right? But still, like no one knows, like client can say, okay, you know what, I want from top to bottom, or maybe for some module. So re-architecting the product support of growing scope, which I just mentioned. We need to make sure what is this. Whatever we are going to build is scalable in the sense. Development continuous delivery mode, like my colleagues mentioned, we are doing a 3 weeks iteration cycle, and every 3 weeks we go live. So we need to make sure that existing Ford, because we are not building something totally different project, we are building on top of the existing Ford. That is not breaking. Create test data, test strategy, and approach. That was the biggest challenge. We say like we work in RTL, we are going to work in RTL, but how many of does know Arabic? It's very hard to understand. It's a whole language, right? It's not about the language. Basically, again, like I mentioned earlier, you need to understand what is their way. They want the sliders to be flowing from right to left. It's not just that you align the text now. So creating the test data is main task, and then the test strategy, what we are going to do, was the main thing. Let's understand what is internationalization. So there are 2 parts of it: content localization and presentation of content. Why 2? Why I say it's 2? Because whatever content you have, right, there is script a language, right? It's written in such a way, such a format, right? There are fonts which are supported for such language. Let's say Russia, it supports Cyrillic font, right? It's not the normal Latin accent or Latin fonts. It's basically Cyrillic scripting. The same for Arabic. Right? They have their own scripting stuff. There are ways to define their. Okay, let's take an example of English. You have italics in English, right? So what it does is basically it turns the text in italics. But in Arabic, there is no italics. If you change the format of a character in italic format, it can turn out something else. So, content localization is important. Same as currencies, change the currencies, their time format, their date format, all these are content basically. Then it comes to the presentation part. Presentation, I'm mostly going to talk about RTL here because we just went ahead with that step, not further or the far northeast. So in RTL, the presentation of content is very important. So understand you have this board, right? We are reading from top left corner and going toward this side. But in RTL, it's going to be flipped. And you actually start from the right top corner and read it through here. Your presentation, your UX, what we call is UX, basically you start from here and go there. So in this slide, as of now, the majority of the focus start from this corner, right? And it goes further. So that means your mindset is set that I will go from this side to that side. In RTL, it changed totally. Your sliders, your carousels, your whatever you want to call it, right? It changed totally differently, totally flipped, right? So we need to make sure that presentation of content is also localized. It's not breaking. Okay. Let's talk about the creation of data. Challenges, because as I mentioned, that's a marketing website. It was spread across 130 locales. We were going 40 locales further ahead, which means 170 locales and other things. So it's a very heavy data dependent website because marketing websites are mostly the data, right? You provide as much marketing data you can provide. With images, it can contain images, can contain text, or it can contain a mix of them, or some animations, or some sort of user experience enhancements. Localized data, like we discussed. Yeah, that was the main challenge. Very less knowledge around the languages and the language specifics. That was very, though we found out like there are a few people who understand Arabic and they can say, okay, whatever you have developed, still good, but you know what? I think this character is not what you want to present here. So, Far East languages scripting is a bit different. We cannot, I mean, for me, I cannot understand any character of it. So Far East languages, basically North Korean language or Korean language, Chinese or Japanese, these languages, they have their own set of characters, and those character sets are a huge character set. If you change some scripting strokes, when one of the characters turns out the another one, and we don't know what we are writing, and we don't know what we are putting on the web. So that was one thing. Plus, so what happens when you develop any website, right? You have scripting, English has, what do you call this, top strokes and bottom strokes and the middle stroke, right? The same thing happens in other languages also. When you define line heights or width or height of any text, that can vary according to the languages. If I have certainly line height 20 pixels, right, for a text box, so it is appearing, let's say, this way, but because I'm using some other font, which is supporting some other script, and when I put it there, 20 pixels can be huge or can be very small. So need to understand what is we are going to create. That's why we need to create the test data so that we can understand. Okay, this is looking good in English, looking good in Cyrillic, looking good in French, blah blah blah. But in Arabic, the font size is small because the script language is different. So we need to understand and to create test data. Some of the examples of the localization applications which are available over the world. This is basically Amazon News Indian, Sony.uk, and this is again for Arabic version for the Amazon. Now you can actually see in this case, everything is flipped, right? Not the images, but everything is flipped over there. So that kind of thing we need to make sure, right? Just few more examples, like Amazon has. So that why I'm taking these examples are basically just to let you understand these are huge websites, and huge website means you cannot take a chance to break anything when it goes to production. So, and you are actually, let's say Amazon. As of now, if you open Amazon, I think it does not support Arabic words, Arabic things. Same as eBay. So creation of data, we wrote a very small script for creation of data. It's not very fancy stuff, it's a very basic thing. We have some database. What we do is basically create our data, our local data, the development data in JSON formats, and we push the JSON data to the database, right? Quite simple. What we wanted to do is basically create JSON files with the data set for Arabic language. That's it. Nothing more than that. So what we did is basically created language localized Arabic dummy text in one file. Just find out log and sum and convert it to translate to else. So you do that, and then you create one config object or one config file which says, out of this, I want to create this JSON file, but in this JSON file, there are these attributes which requires to be converted. I don't want to convert everything of the JSON, right? Because in my JSON data, in my data, I am, let's say, supporting the numbers, let's say supporting the language specific currency symbols. I don't want to change that, right? I just want to change, let's say there is a title, there is some body, there is some anchor, or there is some link text, or there is some link URL, some things, right? So I defined some config object there. I defined my primary localized data set at one place, and then just run a Ruby script. What it does is basically gets the data, reads the config, populates, and create the stuff for me, and just puts in database. What it helps is basically you have the localized data now. For the same set, what you have in English, you have the localized data set. It is very important to understand that you need to have the localized data to understand and to create the similar behavior for RTL, which is already there in LTR, so that you are not breaking, plus you are actually creating the right set of RTL presentation there, right? Let's talk about development. So we had already, like I mentioned, I'm discussing and keep iterating it over again and again. We had already the idea for, and it's a huge, right? It's already built. So understand, like you have this Amazon website or something like Sony or something Amazon, right? These are like now distributed into multiple modules as of now, right? So if you take an example of Amazon, the left bar is basically one sort of module which contains your all menu list. At the top header, the whole header part contains the menu list or lots of other things. The same thing goes for the recently viewed items, recently, or people are looking at these items, so on and so forth, right? So the things are basically those modules are already there. Now we want to convert those modules into LTR, right? So there were lots of challenges in that. Thousands of modules developed already. Implement RTL without breaking LTR. That is the major point of anything. But whatever you are going to do it. Don't worry. But you need to make sure that the existing is not breaking, because it's already in production and people are getting revenue out of it. And if you lose the money, client gets super angry. So creating dynamic SAS is not possible. Yes, that's one main point, because we're using SAS. And what SAS does is basically, SAS is a preprocessor of CSS. What you do is basically write some dynamic CSS, and that converts into your proper CSS. Basically, you have the ability to create dynamic stuff in SAS instead of writing pure CSS. We were using SAS, and you cannot pass arguments in SAS that, you know what, SAS, let's compile something for LTR, or let's compile something for RTL, or let's compile something for this width or this color or something like that. What you need to do is basically, in itself in SAS, you need to define these things, what you want to do. So there was one major challenge with SAS does not support dynamism. Yes. So we saw that module on the top page on the MSN website, right? There was one big guy or one big hero image kind of thing, where a person is, there is one image, right? But suppose that is a module which supports lots of variations, that a text can come on top corner, top left corner. And when it comes top left corner, that means I'm passing some configuration there. So that means if I say top left corner, that should always present on top left corner, whether it is English or Arabic, does not matter. So it's not 100% mirror. It is beyond that. There are like 90% mirror and 10% should remain as is. So testing that increases the complexity, right? Because if you just want to flip it, you can actually change a couple of things and it will flip throughout. You need not to worry about it. But now when the thing comes, you know what? This module and this variation should remain as is, but X variation should flip. That is the complexity part. Interactions. Like I mentioned, you have a carousel or you have a slider, right? Slider left, sorry, next and previous. That's the default behavior. A slider is here. If there is one button there and one button here, that button will say this is the next. And when you say that button, this button, it will say previous. That's the default behavior of any LTR website. It flips in LTR, in RTL. When you click on that, that means it's a previous. And this turns out to be the next, because we are going through this way, right? Okay, we can still achieve that. Just flip the arrows and change the positions. What's the big deal? Big deal is because you have now fancy animations. It's going from this way or coming from this way. That has to also be flipped. Those calls JS interaction. We need to test those also. So these JS interaction in the development part has to be flipped. So we need to take care of those things also. So there are possible two solutions for talking about only CSS part here, which is the major part. What approach you can take, or what approach we took after the analyzing of a couple of things. So there are two possible solutions. One is override CSS. So override CSS, you have the LTR part. What you do is basically create RTL stuff, and you say if X module comes, X module's header should be flipped, or X module's Y box should be floated right. Just an example, right? But what you are doing is, these are the advantages, very quick to implement. You need not to worry about the idea because that's, you are not touching it, right? It's there. No worries about the LTR, but there is advantages. Why quick to implement is basically you are implementing something new. What you need to do is you just need to see the existing CSS, copy it maybe, and then say, these are the attributes I need to change, just change it, done. It's very, very quick. But the disadvantages, extra CSS weight. For the LTR side, why they need to worry about, why need to they actually, pay extra money for the loading website, I would say in that sense. Because extra CSS weight increases your page load, and your performance also. Because the more rules, the more heavy DOM operations, the more heavy DOM repaint mechanisms, and all that things. Too many excess CSS rules, payload speed, and less reliable. Why it is less reliable? Suppose, because we are in continuous delivery mode, let's say there is a new requirement for the same module, I want to change in LTR. So I need to go in LTR also and in RTR also and change in both places. So it's not that extendable actually, and reliable also. The second one, divide and write the separate CSS. So what we do is, we take the same whole set of CSS and we say, I want to create two CSS out of it. One is for LDR and one is for RDR. Right? The advantages, no override of rules. We'll talk about like how we did it, how we actually achieved it, what are the things we did, and what we can do also the same thing. No override of rules because we are using the same set in two different ways, right? We are passing something up, we are doing some magic in there and it's generating two different CSS. Page load remains because there is no extra thing, and very flexible and stable because as soon as you change for LDR, it changes for RTL also. You just need to make sure that both things are working fine. It's simple and provides customizability. You have lots of control over on top of it. You can actually customize most of the things in there. Disadvantages? Yes, there are disadvantages also. Hard to debug. If you find something, you need to make sure, okay, there is some bug which is coming in RTL. Is it coming in LDR also? Okay, it's not coming. Was that bug available in the earlier LDR version? Let's check. So those kind of things are there. Required extra effort in testing to make sure not breaking the LDR in future. In future, not currently, but in future. So we took this approach actually. We discarded this approach because of simple reason 2 and 4 over 4 and 2 points. Implementation. What we did is there is a request coming in. We detect the content direction. We set up some server side configuration where we check, okay, the request coming for this locale and that locale supports RTL or not supports RTL. We detect that directions and we pass the direction to our front end, and that actually detects whether to get LDR CSS or RTL CSS. Those are two separate things populated via one set of CSS rules, and then we serve the RTL or LDR depending on what the request came in. That sounds simple, right? But the engineering behind it, it's a bit tricky. Let's see a small demo of it, how to implement an existing LDR website or converting into RTL. I hope you guys are able to see this thing, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm not going in detail of like what is the setup or what is the architecture. It totally on you. What is the project? What are the requirements? I'm just going to give an idea how we can achieve that. So there are some. There is one. Let's start with this one. So we have 3 variables. Very stupid names, left dir and right dir. You can create your own names. Usually people debate around that. Why left dir and right dir? It will remain same, right? And people say it should be primary direction and then reverse direction. You can use that also. I find it easy to understand and easy to keep it in the code. So anyone who is coming after me can look at the thing and think, oh, left, yeah, that means should be left. Then you can check 2 variables and can understand, okay, this is the thing. Let's take an example of this guy. What we did is basically what we generally do in LDR or in any project. We have margin left, margin right, right left, border left, float, left position, right position. These kind of attributes, right? Now instead of using those attributes directly, we said don't use the attributes. Use mixins instead of that. And what we do is basically pass the value in there. So what we do is, let's say a float mixin, right? There is a small increment of development effort because you need to make sure that whenever you're writing float, you will say include float instead of just float, right? And then you pass the value in there, right? Simple, this way. What would be the value? Value would be this, right? Or value could be right direction. That's as simple as it says, okay, this box I want to float it left side, so I'll say left direction, right? Right. So that way you pass the values in there, and I'll just show you how where we have used. Yes. So there is, I have used a navigation bar which I actually said floated in the right direction. And what happens in LTR, because we have these variables for the LTR, and when I run the code, it runs like that. Just an example of a normal page, you can go extensive in that. There's one my logo and one my navigation bar, and a small hero image which has a box which is floated right, and then there's a footer also, right? Now I'm going to change these variables from this to this. So what I did is basically the left direction is now right and right direction is now left. And is RTL? Yes, it is RTL. Right? And voila. Nothing. Just three variables, simple use of makes sense, and you are done. It changed the navigation from right to left. My primary focus is my logo, which is on there. And actually it does not include lots of coding. Actually my code is just a few lines, this much. That's it, right? So interesting part is basically margin left, float left, and there are a few more. Say text line and then floating. So that's how you can actually develop your RTL websites. Right. Let's go back to the. Now comes the testing of RTL. What to test? Data or presentation. Right. We already have done the data part because we were using some pre-process of HTML. So we understood that data can break the HTML. So we were already at that part. Now it is the part of presentation. How much to test? What is the depth or what to test? You want to test images also? You want to test all the text? You want to test what is the test limit? And what is the level of depth of testing? Do you want to test all the modules and all the variations and all the text alignments, all the everything, right? Which level you want? Should we check the existing website? Yes. Compare the new LTR with the old LTR. There is a focus point on old LTR to keep it intact. Because you are not actually interfering between the same CSS and you are injecting your own rules, that means you may be breaking something which is there. So, automating of CSS. We understood because we were already doing the data part validations and data part testing. Now we want to do the presentation part. So we already knew that we are going to do the CSS. So separation of concerns and then automate data and markup. Separation of concerns means so CSS testing can be done in multiple ways. One of the example Vishnu and Sridhar showed you, because that was CSS and you can check the whole page images, or you can do the init level testing. So that was a separation of concern for us for CSS testing, automate data and markup. We were already doing that, but we wanted to check whether the automated data for the localized content is coming proper or not to the CSS. Automated existing LTR representation, which is important, and RTL presentation with the old markup. Markup does not change this essentially. And automated comparisons, which we discussed in the earlier talk, how to automate the comparisons of the images. So we had three major points to automate this stuff. One was markup compilation and data validation automation, which we were already doing, automated CSS presentation, which we did using Phantom CSS part, like comparison and other stuff, and then Jasmine for CSS testing. Why we did that, we'll just talk about it. Let's take a demo on the same thing. Before I might to talk 1 minute why we did take the example of Jasmine for CSS testing. We knew that there are only few places we are changing, right? Floats, all left-right things, margin, border, padding, or left-right positions. These are 8 or 9 attributes which we were changing. The effort of doing the automation level at acceptance test is high. Plus, it increases the response time of it, or the feedback time of it, I would say, right? What you do is basically write some automation test, acceptance test. The loop is higher than a unit test. If I write some unit test on it, it will be much faster. So we decided, let's go with the unit test for CSS and then proceed further. I hope this area is visible to the last audience. Right. So what we did is use the Jasmine for that. And Jasmine, simple structure of Jasmine, like you have fixtures for that. And we had normal Jasmine library, a spec helper, and a main spec, and then further. What we did is use TestM. There's a tool TestM which actually runs JavaScript or Jasmine test over the console in headless mode. You can run in the browser also, but it just allows us to run the Phantom JS or Jasmine, not Phantom, yes, Jasmine for that. Yes. So what we did is basically we created 2 files, 2 sets essentially. One is LTR CSS server and RTL CSS server. Let's stop what we did there. So we created one test suite, and we wanted to make sure that this one test suite is applicable for LTR and RTL, and it is making sure that this test suite or whatever test we are writing are actually working for both of the things, right? Because the markup is same, is just about the CSS part. So we wanted to make sure that CSS are being tested properly, right? What we did is created one line between test suite, and in that we created normal acceptance test, right? Like you expect something to be here. The point to be noted is this statement, right? Why is this here? Usually, the Jasmine does not provide you such things, right? What it says is to have CSS and then values or properties for competition. But now we wanted to use the same thing. What we did is basically created some custom helpers on top of the existing ones, and in there we passed some variables which made our life easy. How do you do that? Is basically, let's say I created to be floated left function, and there is a custom jQuery, Jasmine jQuery mixins file we wrote, and there is this. Before we go into that, I'll just show you one more this part. We did the same thing in JavaScript spec runner HTML file also, to make sure that what we are passing the variables are right for LTR and the RTL. So we did the same thing. Left direction is left, right direction is RTL false. And now when I say to be floated left for my head logo, it comes here and it checks, did I pass any direction value? The dir value? No, I did not. I just said the normal one, right? The blank function. So it says, okay, no dir value, use the left direction. Left dir. Because I'm checking the left, I pass left dir. And then I pass this, the CSS float value it has to be DIR. Now the same thing will run on RTL, right? And what will happen? Because direction value, sorry, the left DIR in RTL is right, and the CSS is also saying that my logo is actually floated left, or sorry, floated right. So that's why it will pass. Right? So we created a bunch of functions here. Most of the like text align center or text align right, text align left, and we made sure in the test suite we are not having specific cases of to have CSS or such hard-coded values over here. Whenever you want to use, create a function and make sure that function is available for LTR and RTL both. Let's just run this through. Which one? So here I go, this way, and this page, and I go to the browser and say it is failing. Right? Why it is failing? I'll just see. It says row marketing to have text align left parameter right, and it is failing on LTR. Why it is failing? Because I have passed an argument when it is left aligned. I have passed an argument which says right. So I am forcing the direction there to make sure the test is right or not, right? If I remove this and save and say refresh, now passes. Right. Let's see the same thing for RTL. Same thing, everything is same, the same suit. If you actually comment out one of the tests in one place, let's say I comment out this guy and say refresh. So there are 4. Same thing here, 4. With the same tool, same test suite, we used CSS for LTR and RTL. Are extendable, are working in the right way, what we want. There are restrictions, as always. Dynamic attributes and value testing is hard. What I mean by dynamic attributes are basically if you write or if you append some things using JavaScript. Nowadays we are using CSS heavily, so transform one of the property. These kind of things are very hard. Transform, transitions, and all the things are very hard because and it is running on Phantom JS mode. It is running in headless mode and it is not able to find these things, right? So testing attributes supported by HTML itself. If I am using display line block, it will internally be handled by any problem. So display line block in LTR will start from the left side and the RTL will start from the right side automatically. I need not do anything. But testing for those things hard. What we did is basically went ahead and used Phantom CSS part, which Vishnu and Sridhar created, testing that visual comparison is also possible. Yeah, that's one line from my side. Yes.
To ask you my question, I really appreciate that one thing that you have differentiated content localization and before asking my question, I just want to appreciate you that you have differentiated like content localization and presentation of that content is somewhat different. Like you have given that examples also like right navigation and left navigation. That was pretty good. My question is based on localization or local this website. If your website is in English and also some German kind of different things, sometimes I have seen one functionality like if you want to delete your profile pic, that is a functionality there. If you click on that delete button in English website like global website, it shows like Yes and no. Left side is yes and right side is no. But if you go for some German sites, you can see that no and yes. So that kind of presentation also there, like not only text from left to right, and also the functionality also. How you will support this country?
My point on that question, you are actually not asking about the localization part. It is more of a UX part. If I have two buttons and the two buttons are the same weight and same colors or same weightage, that means some UX is broken because you cannot have a positive action and negative action at the same way, right? That means if there is a yes, let's say example of Facebook, you are talking about profile pic, so it would be a blue and the cancel. Maybe it could be a link or could be a gray or light gray button. Just an example, right? So that means I can compare those things in visualization, right?
Yeah, but while rendering or functionality, well, how you will support that?
I think mostly it comes from the content part because we know, okay, in German, I want to put yes or no in the other ways. So when I'm creating a module, I know if there are certain languages which supports in the other way, not in the proper way. I'll do the coding at that level. And then while testing this stuff, I'll actually modify the stuff. Modify my code or modify my test in a way. I need to test that part also. So create one more test for this.
Okay, you will separate the test from. Thank you. And my second question is, you are taking a request from some particular location. You are tracking that location, and accordingly, your application is going to respond. You have mentioned. So, in that way, if a person is on vacation, he is reading that website from that particular country, and he want to see that country Amazon website only, but in English, kind of thing.
So you
how
need to give. So essentially, what you do is if you are in India, you use Amazon or in, right? That's a basic thing. Even if you go to US and you are ordering something for India, you will actually do Amazon or in first thing. Then and it's basically more of server side question, I would say, because at server side or at back end you will then determine whether okay, you know what, you are actually trying to hit Amazon.in, but you are an Amazon.com area. Would you like to go ahead with Amazon.com or is still want to continue with Amazon.in? So in that sense, it's very clear, right?
Thank you.
Have you faced any problem while testing or development to combination of a any name or any part with a combination of local plus English? I mean, I can say
Yes.
product is installed on OPT and then some double character like Chinese or Japanese, then can say
That's called bidirectional issue universal. So what it means is basically you have text or you have content which includes both of the languages with English, LTR and local RTF also, right? In that sense, yes, we face lots of issues, but we separated those things out. We said, because this is not an issue with only one part, it's across, right? So we need to find out where are we actually putting the data, content, mixed content. If it is a mixed content, you need to use some attributes of HTML, which is one says dir equals to auto. It actually internally handles. You need not to worry about it. But testing that, it's definitely a challenge.
because can say Google account, we have to upload the image, but due to that localization, as a customer, end user, I select the part with combination of my English and local language. While upload, there is some problem. We can say because the combination of that local language and English language, maybe image or
What I'm hearing is actually two mixed problems. You are talking about uploading some mixed content to server, or
image or anything we upload with a path. My path is
combination of
yeah.
You are doing something at server side, right?
Yeah.
You say this is my combination of content, which is my because let's say I'm using my computer on German language. Sorry, take some time. On German language, right? So German language has some weird characters, let's suppose, or maybe Turkish, which has some weird characters, or some UTF extra characters, right? Does your server support that or not? If it is supporting that, I think you should just handle that. So you are actually not talking about the content and visualization layer. You are more talking about if I pass this data on server, how to handle that. I think that's more of a backend person's answer who can actually present it. Okay, this data is coming. Let's interpret this data. Okay, it is having some weird character. Try to apply some different format, UTF-8 or maybe something else. So, does that answer your question?
Okay, in interest of time, sorry, in interest of time, we're already overshooting the time. We'll take just one last question, if that's okay. Abhinav is around taking pictures. You can always stop him and ask him questions, and he'll get to it.
Unless these people are not hitting me. I'm not in my picture. Yes, thank you. Chala.
Can we use this similar concept if your mobile native application is also in localized language?
You can use what is stopping you. I think as far as my experience, I have experience. You need to again go ahead and you need to create such sort of mixings or some sort of functionalities which returns you the values according to the localized part, whether you want to support RTL or LTRC. You cannot simply say, like in Android, right? You write most of the things, so most of the UI in XML, and you provide such values there. So instead of providing hard-to-be values, provide some functions which return some values there. If you do that, that's the whole concept of this, right? It is this, right? What we are doing is basically creating some functions which are returning us some values, which are dependent whether it's the RTL or LTL. That's the whole game. So I think we can do it. I haven't tried it. It seems possible to me.
Because the screen size is small.
Yes. So the same thing.
Visualization.
Agree, but that, like, how does it matter? Like, if I just turn out this website into a mobile website, a small screen size, like 320 pixels by 480 pixels or 560 pixels, it will remain same. Like my logo will be left behind, and then when I go into RTL, my logo will be right behind. All this is the menu button in mobiles, right? Most of the menu buttons are on the left side, right? But in RTL, it has to be on the right. That's my primary area. So it's not only about developing that thing. You need to understand this whole behavior of RTL. It's more of a UX part, not only of a development and testing. UX starts that, and then you need to make sure, okay, whatever I'm developing is right and not right. That's the answer.
Okay, sorry. We're already overshooting time. So thank you, Abhinav, for introducing us to actually giving us a flavor of internationalizations. We're doing it in multiple projects, and especially in global projects where we have this platform. You can catch hold of Abhinav, Vishnu, Sridhar, Ritika, one of our photographer, me. We are all part of the same project. So if you have any questions around LTR, you catch hold of us. We'll try and answer your questions. Right now, we'll be breaking for lunch. We have 45 minutes for lunch. Sorry.
We have over. I have taken your 5 minutes.
Time off. So 40 minutes for lunch, and soon after that, we'll have workshops. I'm sure everybody has registered for their respective workshops. We'll have 4 tracks. Track 1 will be here. Track 2 and 3 that side. Track 4 at that corner. There's a room called Agakha. Is where the track 4 workshop will happen. We would like to begin on time, so 1:30. We'll be on the respective tracks that we want. Feedbacks are always appreciated. We have feedback. Please keep giving us feedback on the event, on the talks that we are having, on the workshop. It helps us grow better.
Cool. And any questions, you can contact me on. Yeah.